right, so FinCom meeting for 13 February, called to order at 6 o'clock. Public participation. I see none.
None.
All right, so, FY 26 budget reviews. So first up, I believe we have the IT department. We have all this, except Evan, the subcommittee's members present to speak to the IT budget. Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
I did.
Evan's.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's Evan's here.
Oh, Evan, yep.
Good evening, everybody.
Gotcha, Evan.
Yeah, I think Todd's doing a great job. He, just the relationships between the various IT departments are so much better now than they used to be. And I think that's all because of him. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the fact that there's some things we want to follow up on around training people in the town about how to avoid clicking that link in that email or text. I got one today, or my wife did, that she sent me a screenshot of that was, it was Easy Pass. You know, click on that link because you haven't paid, and it all looks reasonable if you are busy and not pay attention. And ultimately, all the best tools in town for IT security are not going to help us if the people aren't well educated and don't click on that link. So there's some things we want to follow up on there, but I think they're doing a great job. There were some changes that we talked about in terms of new programs that have been moved over to the IT budget, but otherwise, all good. How about you?
Yep, I think one of the things that's really tough for us to kind of understand as a committee, because we're looking at the budgets on a case-by-case basis each night. But as you mentioned, there was some software costs that were moved from the town budget, and not new software, but pre-existing software that was moved from one budget to the other. So it kind of messes with the numbers slightly. But there was minus one FTE in FY 26, and I think when Kevin goes through the numbers, you'll see that. But for a total decrease in the budget, it's not exactly that minus one FTE. It's significantly less that due to the software that's being brought in. And of course, you know, that has an impact on the town budget. We didn't review that when we reviewed the town hall budgets last meeting. But something to, I guess, to be cognizant of. Possible that I might be able to put something together that shows kind of transfers across budgets as like a view that might be helpful for us to just take a look at a future meeting. But also commend Todd for all the work that we've done, like in the past few years, trying to de-risk a lot of our risks associated with IT infrastructure, cyber security, and all of that. A couple of years ago, we looked at our insurance policy to make sure that we were meeting kind of all of the requirements in order for us to be covered. And I think there's been a lot of work towards that. I think we're in a pretty good position. We haven't been hacked, not that I know of.
Yeah.
That was good.
But it is interesting because there was that one program that was hacked, made the news. It had to do with the school side, and it was nothing that anybody in town did. It was a vendor who had this problem, and it just points out how difficult it is to not get whacked. You know, because all of your vendors are in your family essentially.
And I'll also say too that the communication that came out from that incident, I think as a parent of school children in the school, I did receive a couple of those. I read them very carefully. They were excellent communications. But yeah, I think that's all that I have to say about the budget.
following up on that, on the school department, but do you have purview over the school department software? Or are they
No.
themselves?
So they manage themselves, but they contract services from us.
And I do see that there's a transfer of money from the school budget over here. And that's for those contractual services?
Yeah, it's services that they used to have from third-party vendors, but they would find they always bring us in to help. And then it was just cheaper to have us do it.
Well, I would say cheaper, but also way better.
It's better too. It's quicker. We have, fully their best interest.
And there's also some charges from WMGLD.
Yep.
That come in
Gas and
for
light.
services rendered.
Great. So I know that, having had a bond rating call last week, the bond rating agencies are now hyper concerned about cybersecurity. So we do have a cybersecurity insurance policy.
We do, yep.
It's not just for geeks anymore.
Exactly. It's a real risk, yeah.
Were there any specifics that they were like focused on in terms of cybersecurity?
Again, they just wanted a general overview of measures put in place to protect. They want to know if you have insurance above and beyond the scope. As the point I'm making about of IT, what is your scope? You have a citywide scope and control over these things. Because you're gonna find in some places that, the departments doing their own type of thing.
Is there anything that the insurance company is coming back with that we would need to think about in the future, right? So I know that there's certain things that they used to say, these are best practices versus now you don't get coverage if you don't have them. So is there anything that's coming down the pipeline that needs to be thought about?
That was a conversation we just had that we're gonna follow up.
Okay.
And find out, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
He's actually going to reach out to them and say, so what is it that you actually need to see? And then we
Right.
can make sure that we're there before we run into a problem. And then they say, oops, sorry.
It's gonna be this much more,
Right.
right? Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah, another question if I can. I was particularly interested in reading the subcommittee report about the time and attendance software.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that. Is this a Munis product?
It is a Munis product, yep.
Okay,
So we're replacing Novatime, which is third party. Their equipment is end of life as of this July. So instead of renewing equipment with them and having these silos for time and attendance, we're integrating with Munis with one of their products.
it integrates with Munis payroll.
Yeah, it's part of it.
How does it work with the end user? Do the employees
Users just,
punch in or?
they'll see a new different time clock, or they can punch in from their phone. Depends on how that user is set up.
Maybe I throw this to Steve. Steve, any collective bargaining issues around that or no problem? The employees on that?
I wouldn't think so. It's just
No.
a different time.
We're actually negotiating with the union right now, and we were talking about that, and they said, I mean, we're not gonna like put things on slips of paper anymore, particularly during snow emergency. Says, no, that's not gonna happen anymore. So, yeah, they were fine.
Super.
But there will be one, I'm sure, when, as soon as
Yeah.
it isn't what. If I could, Mr. Chairman, talked about, Brian, began the conversation about how hard it is not to get people to click on that link. Which is, but really difficult. But Todd's done a great job in bringing in training that is actually, I'm gonna say, kind of enjoyable. It's no, it really is. It's kind of like it's a scenario and the guy's a detective and he talks. So it keeps people it kept people's attention. So kudos to Todd for bringing in something that wasn't just totally dry and boring. It kind of told a little story and then you got quizzed on what you did. So it was a good job. We ran a little contest, right, to see what department finished first and most people. So it's pretty good.
Nice. And, you also mentioned too during our meeting that there was going to be a tabletop exercise for cybersecurity with the Wakefield.
Gas and light, yep. Have that coming up next week.
Oh, it's next week. Okay. That was,
First of a few.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The first of a few of them with them.
Oh, okay. All right, nice. Are there any other, like, is a police or any other departments involved in?
Not in that particular one, that's surrounding their systems. So we will have some similar though.
Okay, and does that also have something to do with energy resiliency? Like for the town?
Not sure. It's mostly just the, well, probably because it's the systems that they're using to manage everything.
Evan, did you have any other comments from the subcommittee?
No, I think you and Brian summed it up really well. I think centralizing, a lot of these software related costs is prudent because it's mostly, if not totally centrally managed day to day. I think it's a prudent move, even if it screws up our apples to apples sort of historical look back year over year. We'll figure that out. You touched on it, Stefan, but I do think there's been great attention, the proper amount of attention and progress given to the cybersecurity, sort of the insurance, crossing T's and dotting I's there to make sure we have coverage. Todd's done a really great job. So I learned something every year I sit in this meeting from Stefan and Brian. So no, I think overall we're in good shape, and this is a good move to move these costs over.
All right, any other discussion?
We get to hear Kevin.
I'll give a quick rundown. The IT budget, we're requesting a decrease for fiscal 26 at $27,639 over the current fiscal year. Under personal services, there's a decrease of $88,394. The reason for this reduction is the elimination of one position. As this existing personnel will take over these duties, there are contractual and negotiated salary increases included in this budget. Under contractual services, the increase is $58,030. Software maintenance has increased $59,390, which includes the yearly price increases for software maintenance. Also includes some new additional support for software. Small decrease under telephone, $1,360 due to the elimination of one position. Materials and supplies decreased $350. We increased motor vehicle parts $100, and we decreased the clothing line item by $450. Total budget request for fiscal 26 is $465,614.
Hard to argue with a budget that goes down.
Any additional discussion?
I just want to compliment the town administrator for cutting $1 out of the departmental request.
Oh, did I do that?
Rounding.
Oh. You're welcome. That's the dollar that Mullen needs when we do a town meeting, right? For the eminent domain takings.
Right, the motion to approve,
I usually do all the approvals at the end.
all the approvals,
Yeah.
Right. Sorry,
I like your style. That's good.
all right,
Yeah, be nice to him. He's a rookie.
I know we have the police folks here, is it? I'm not sure if there's any library folks online,
Catherine McDonald is online.
okay. All right, we can move forward with the library budget.
Evening.
Next one.
Good evening, Catherine, did you have anything to say?
I always have something to say. So the subcommittee met and reviewed this document, and I had met with Kevin and Steve earlier, and it's been approved by the Board of Trustees, and pretty much no one has had many questions. So I don't know if Kevin wants to run through briefly the numbers, and then if you have questions, I can answer those. Or do you want me to do it, Kevin?
No, I'll take care of that.
You do it, yeah.
Um, there's also the IT subcommittee. I think Dan Sherman did meet with them. I don't know if you want to do Dan first and then me.
Library.
I'm sorry, library first. Dan?
Yep, it's up to the vice chair. Shall I talk?
Sure, yeah, subcommittee members, present, so if you have any comments, you can speak to
sure.
the library budget, please do.
Yeah, so the library budget was actually very straightforward for us, unlike like last year or previous years. The personal services budget only went up 3.6%, and all that was under contractual. The total budget like 3.2%. We looked at that on the contractual and materials and supplies, and everything seemed very reasonable. We also looked at the aspects of the office supplies, books and materials. And obviously the books and publications is a big deal for us to make sure that we continue to be within certification for the Library Board of Trustees, which this budget is. And it has been for a number of years now. For those of us who've been on the Finance Committee for many years, you may recall that we had to go through a waiver process and so forth. But we've been fine on that. So pretty straightforward budget, not a lot going on here. So we had no issues or questions of any materiality for Catherine or the Board of Trustees. Because it was a very straightforward budget, this year we did not meet with the Board of Trustees. Didn't seem it was necessary. And they had done a first draft or approval of this, I think way back in October. I think Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was an October initial budget, and nothing really changed since then. So very straightforward, and I guess steady as she goes. So those are my comments. Any other subcommittee members who wish to talk on this, go ahead. I'm not sure who's on for our subcommittee. I don't know if Joe is here.
I'm here, Dan. Christian's here. Nothing else. I think the only minor note might be the future future improvements to the library that's on down the road. I know Catherine talked about the HVAC and the roof, which we might be doing piecemeal across the next few years, but that would be the only other comment on there.
Yeah, and those comments are included in the minutes of our meeting, so you can refer to that. And we'll vote on those minutes later on this meeting, but yeah, good point. Thank you.
And just a point of clarification for those large expenses in the future, such as HVAC or things of that nature, would that be covered under the capital budget?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's capital.
Okay.
So the way those large capital projects are affecting this operating budget is that the biggest change this year is that we took on an HVAC maintenance contract. And we got that contract specifically because we are a heating and cooling center. We're called upon to be a heating and cooling center sometimes. And last year we had a lot of trouble with the chiller and maintaining, cool enough, comfortable environment for people to actually use it as a cooling center. So now we'll have maintenance and we'll be on a plan that gives us access to repairs quickly, a little quicker maybe than we would have otherwise. So that's the increase in this budget. And as that equipment is replaced, it will be under warranty and there will, all those changes will happen.
All right, excellent. Kevin?
Library budget is requesting an increase of $65,189 over the current fiscal year. The increase in personal services is $55,086. This includes contractual and negotiated increases. There are no new positions and no additional hours. Under contractual services, there's an increase of $5,103. The main increase there is for the HVAC maintenance contract. Materials and supplies increased $5,000. Again, this helps to meet the certification requirements. Total budget request for fiscal 26 is $2,088,525, with $2,035,507 coming from the tax levy and $53,018 coming from available funds, which are the library trust funds.
Right, excellent. Any discussion?
Yes. Kevin, I appreciate the fact that the library trustees use trust fund income to net down
Yes.
the budget. So this is money that were bequeathed to the town at some point in time. This is the interest on the principal.
Correct.
Right. How are we doing on library state aid? Were there any expenditures from library state aid this year?
They do have a couple years in that have been unspent that they use judiciously to meet the requirements for certification
Okay,
as needed.
the textbook, the periodicals and yeah, books, the requirement, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right. All right, well, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Catherine. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, the police budget.
We have Mr. Boudry.
Mr. Boudry is here.
I am. Yep, thank you. So I know you all have the minutes to the meeting that we had, and also two exhibits that were provided later that I'm sure the chief will speak to that involve some metrics. So I'm just gonna speak to some things that are in the minutes, just pull some excerpts. As were also presented at the Finance Committee, Steve read on my behalf on Monday night when this budget was before the town council, which was voted unanimously in favor, by the way, if folks don't know. So the subcommittee, which is myself, Amy Forsyth, Lori Wheeler, and Ed Bean. I see Lori and Amy and Ed on, so I encourage them if they have any feedback after I'm done to please pipe in. Met with Chief Scory and Deputy Chief Calabrese. Chief Scory, I was wondering, would you rather wait till 10 o'clock tonight to present? Or
That was past my bedtime.
yeah, I was watching you from my rocking chair. So that's the time the chief presented on Monday night at the town council meeting. Overall, the budget was level funded with the exception of $500 increase in sundry charges, and also the chief in this budget is requesting one new police officer at a salary of just over $91,000, and I know the chief will speak to that. You know, the overall the budget results in increases of contractually negotiated terms, which we covered in detail last year because it was the first year of that budget. But again, chief did a nice job with contractual services, materials and supply, level funded, maybe a little difference in a couple line items, but level funded those line items. As I mentioned, sundry went up $500. This chief and his team continue to pursue a variety of grants. I don't know if the chief wants to speak to that, but as I mentioned, the chief noted that, you know, the need for one additional police officer is based on the complexity of the calls and also the increases with the population in town with the continued building of apartments and condos. This is something that chief, I think I've been on this committee for about the last, 3 or 4 years, and this is something that chief has brought to our attention through the years that and chief, I don't know if I'm going to quote you correctly here, so please feel free to, correct me, but, I remember in one of the meetings, probably at least a couple of years ago, you said, most of our calls come from apartments there as opposed to, family-owned dwellings. So as as everybody knows, we have a, unbelievable ramp up of numbers of apartments in town and much more to come online. So he did come forward with this budget asking for one additional officer. He did put us on notice that he anticipates requesting more resources in future budgets. As I mentioned briefly, the FinCom folks did ask the chief about, providing some metrics to, give us a better understanding for justification of the additional officer. And we made some suggestions. He did give us a couple of documents or metrics, which you should all have in your packets. So again, I'm not going to go into those. If the chief wants to speak to them, he can. The other thing to note is that the Voc School funds a police officer there, and chief, correct me again if I'm wrong, but you anticipate the new Voc School with a much larger population will require two police officers, which again is funded by the Voc, and of course, which Wakefield pays its own share on. Folks may have noted there's one police officer just unfortunately had to retire at a younger age, so there is an opening. Again, I just want to thank the chief and deputy chief for the years before them. They're very transparent, very honest, and forthcoming about any questions that the team asks of them. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Ed or Amy, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to mention.
No, I think that was a great summary.
That was very comprehensive, Bill.
Okay, thanks. So Kevin, over to you, kid.
Okay, real quickly, we're recommending an increase to this budget of $417,216 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down under personal services. The increase is $416,716, which is for contractual and negotiated increases, and it does include one additional uniform position. Contractual services and materials and supplies are level funded. Small increase to sundry charges, $500. The total budget request for fiscal 26 is $7,931,833.
Any further discussion?
Chief, I noticed that you level funded overtime, and that seems to be just flat, like you've only used half of it at this point, so you hit it on the head.
We're doing our best. We had a little hiccup with the sick time overtime. We had somebody who was in a significant car accident back in August and came back to work in December, so kind of put a dent in our sick overtime budget, but we're still on track to finish where we should.
That's great.
Don has his hand up.
John?
Yes, Chief, I'm looking at the metrics you provided, and I'm just trying to understand, we seem to be an outlier in civilian dispatchers. We have 0, but most of the other communities use civilian dispatchers. And I'm just trying to understand how that all works.
So, Don, back in the day when 911 became a thing, somebody must have made the command decision that the police would handle and staff the 911 center. Most other departments have transitioned to civilian dispatchers or regional dispatch, where our 911 center is still staffed by police officers. If we were going to transition to civilian dispatchers, we would have to hire at least 11 people and still have a police officer in the station to handle any walk-ins, prisoners that are in custody. So our system is a little antiquated, but it still works. But at this point, it's better for us to have more police officers on the street and to still maintain staffing by police in the 911 center.
Okay, so basically all the dispatching is handled by police officers in Wakefield.
Correct. So if you were to compare us to Reading, and I used this example the other night with town council, our populations are close. Reading has 26,000 residents. We're at 28. They're budgeted for 46 police officers. We're budgeted for 47. However, they have 11 civilian dispatchers, 3 civilian assistants, where we have no dispatchers and 1 civilian assistant. So what I did was I broke it down by police department employees per 1,000 residents. And when you break it down that way, Reading's at 2.31 employees per 1,000, and we're at 1.71. If we follow through assuming the population here in Wakefield stays the same and we follow through with hiring additional officers each year for the next few years, we could bring our employees per 1,000 up to 1.86, which would still be low, the lowest compared with all these other cities and towns that I
Yeah.
listed. But I know the population will grow. We have 4 housing unit projects that are slated to finish in the near future, and there's more on tap that will start, which will probably bring our population back to around 30,000, additional 2,000 people, which then puts us back down to 1.73. We're still extremely low, but I feel that by adding 4 officers over the next 4 years, we can get our patrol staffing back to where it needs to be. And I can go into, if anybody wants to know why our patrol staffing is down. But patrol is the backbone of the police department, and our patrol numbers are down for very good reason.
Okay.
I think the
Thank
point
you,
that
that's
you
helpful.
made, I'm sorry,
No, I said, thank you, that's helpful.
I just want to note in the committee report that 2 officers respond to each call for safety purposes.
That's correct. We have 2 officers that respond to each call, and if they determine that only one is needed, one will leave. But for safety reasons, unless it's a call for, say, a identity theft.
Mhm.
But for a call that could potentially need 2 people, 2 officers always go, or 3. And we've even had calls where the whole shift goes, depending what the nature of the call is. And then if they determine that they don't need that many people, some will leave.
Of course, the nature of these calls has changed, much more complex, dealing with emotional situations, disturbances, that type of thing.
Right.
Mental health and
We deal with a lot of mental health calls, a lot, and it ties into substance abuse, and people who are suffering from a mental health crisis can be unpredictable. I said the other night that our people really do a good job with this. They have great communication skills. They have excellent de-escalation skills. And in the numbers I provided for the types of calls that, I believe you all got the year-end report, correct? If you look in there, it says we only had 2 incidents where our officers were required to use force. And when you consider that we had 13,717 calls for service and only 2 resulted in the use of force, that's pretty amazing. And that's a testament to their skill level, because there are some very challenging calls. And at the town council meeting the other night, I used an example from last weekend where we had 2 officers standing at the corner of North Ave and Avon for an hour and a half, trying to talk somebody who was in a mental health crisis into an ambulance. And not only did it take an hour and a half to get them into the ambulance, one officer rode in the ambulance to the hospital at the request of this person because they then felt safe with the officer. The other officer followed the ambulance to the hospital, and then they had to go back and write reports. When you take this whole incident, this one single incident into consideration, it's almost a 3-hour call. The call itself, driving to the hospital, coming back, one officer tied up with a report. And when I talk about complexity of calls, it's not just about what they do at the call, it's after the call too. There's reports that need to be filed, evidence that needs to be logged. There are other agencies that might need to be notified. So we have to make sure that all our Ts and all our Is are, Ts are crossed and Is are dotted.
Stefan, we have Dan and then Dawn with their hand.
Dan, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, thank you. Before I ask my question, Chief, the conditions up here are much improved on the trails, so come on up.
Dan, I zipped by your house at about 60 miles an hour on Sunday.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's who waved to me. So my question has to do with the civilian dispatchers. I'm trying to get my hands around, you thought if we did go civilian, we'd have to have like 11. And I see there's some big numbers, but in terms of the officers, I mean, first of all, 11 seems like a lot more than I would expect. Are these like all part-time positions? Like they're 4 hours on and then they're off for a couple of days, or why 11?
Majority would be full-time, but you would also need some part-time. And you have to consider that we have 3 shifts per day, 7 days per week that need to be covered. And these other towns, they have 2 dispatchers on duty.
Oh, they have 2. Okay,
Mhm.
well, that makes a difference. So, I mean, so we only have 1 officer on duty at a time at dispatch, or do we also have 2?
We have 2 officers with the shift officer in charge. The OIC, the sergeant is in there, and then we have a patrol officer assigned to the desk as well.
I see.
We have
So-
3 911 stations in dispatch. And we need 2 people in there because you could have multiple phones ringing plus the radio going at the same time.
Sure. So would there be any advantage to going hybrid where you'd have like, say, one civilian and one officer at the dispatch at the same time?
It would work. Problem is the conversation I've had with some of the chiefs that have civilian dispatchers is they're having more of a problem hiring and retaining civilian dispatchers than they are police officers. Apparently, it's
Okay.
not a job that a lot of people want, and once they get them through the training, there's a 911, 2 weeks of 911 training, and there's actually a dispatcher academy, which is 6 to 8 weeks, I believe. And what they're finding is a lot of these people are jumping ship for $1 or $2 more an hour somewhere else.
I see. All right. Yeah, so turnover is definitely a big problem for that kind of position. I can see where that could be a problem. Okay, thank you very much. And next time you come by here, will you just stop in and say hi?
I'm usually trying to keep up with the person in front of me.
Don, I see your hand up.
Yes. You also have mental health crisis support, but is that under the health budget?
We have a mental health clinician and a recovery coach that are included in our budget. We have a
Okay.
full-time mental health clinician that she works Monday to Friday from 10 to 6 every day. She responds to calls with officers.
Okay. And is that included in the breakdown that I saw in terms of the employees per?
No,
um,
because she's not a police department employee. She's an employee of Elliott Community Healthcare.
Okay. So it's contractual.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are there any other positions that supplements the police force?
So the only position that, the only agency that supplements us is the vocational school. Back when I started here in 2000, we were budgeted 46 officers. Now we're budgeted for 47 because back 13 years ago, when the vocational school requested an SRO, they agreed to pay for the position.
And then I assume that position is shared resource amongst all the towns within.
Right. Also, it's in our assessment from them, as the other 11 towns.
Chief, you've had great success bringing in some grant money, and could you just address that, maybe get it on the record? Yeah.
So, police officers that work dispatch, which is all of them, including myself sometimes, we all have to do 16 hours of 911 training every year. So we have a grant that covers that. We're required to have emergency medical dispatch with our 911 center, which either all of our officers become EMTs or we contract with somebody. So we've contracted with Cataldo Ambulance. They handle our emergency medical dispatch, and we get a grant that covers that. We have grants that cover traffic safety, so we may get a grant from the state that lets us buy some traffic safety equipment or lets us go out and do some extra patrols for, say, people using their cell phones while they're driving, speeding, crosswalk violations, some specific OUI enforcement. We got grant for child car seats. So we have a couple of car seat technicians that if somebody has an outdated seat, or if they need a new one, they can come to the station. We'll give them a seat and install it for them. We had a grant for equipment last year. The grant wasn't available this year, but we were able to buy some new detective equipment last year with that grant. What am I missing?
We have a grant for the sex offender registry. We have to, all the SORs have to come in and register, but you're also supposed to go out and do checks on them. Some departments are better than others. We're very on top of that. And we have a grant that covers about 50% of that overtime for when the officers, we have a couple sergeants who they do a great job. And because of the work they do, we're always at the top of the list for that grant. So that's one more we have. And then we also have a domestic violence counselor from Respond that works probably about 16 hours a week at the station. And we have a grant that we get her for free. So she's a fantastic resource. We have an officer that does a great job, but some people want the confidentiality of dealing with a private, like a citizen who's not a police officer, and so that's a huge resource. So she's in the station as part of our social services department, and it doesn't cost us anything. So So just a few, I think.
We also get a grant that covers the replacement of bulletproof vests. Bulletproof vests have to be replaced in a 5-year cycle. So we get that grant every year, and of course, everybody, because of when they got hired, it's different time. This year, we ordered 26 bulletproof vests at $1,300 each. So quite a bit of money, and it was all covered by a grant.
Is there any risk to the town in terms of cost for any of those services that you rely on, specifically like Cataldo ambulatory services that you get that grant for? If you don't get that grant, then if those services you still rely on would become a cost to the town.
It would.
What, do you know the cost?
18,000.
That's 18,000.
18,000, and that's for an annual? Okay. Is that limited to X number of pickups or?
No, unlimited. So at any time a call comes in that's medical related, the officer working 911 will transfer that call straight to Cataldo ambulance.
Right, any further discussion?
I just say if everyone's done, I've been in this business a long time and I talk with my fellow managers a lot. And if you have a police department that is a problem, you can almost do nothing else as a community. You're fighting that problem. I've never had a problem in 20 years. Pleasure working with your entire force. And one of my last chances to say this, I'm going to say it tonight. Really, we have aces there anticipating problems. I mean, way ahead of the curve on helping people with mental health issues, way ahead of the curve. And I've been in the police station and seen this, and members of that, mental health community coming in and saying, I'm off today, I need your help. That is so rare. And so kudos to your entire force.
Thank you
for that.
And
Really appreciate it.
thank you for everything that Mr. Mayo does for us. Having talked to a lot of chiefs, I know that there's some strained relationships out there. Yeah, Mr. Mayo makes everything easy for us and always gives me an ear to talk to, and I appreciate you.
Even when I say no.
It's all part of the sport, my friend.
I know you were late up on Monday. I do appreciate you guys stopping by and.
Anytime, thank you.
Thank you. So that's it for the budgets on the docket for this week. Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We approve the budget, Steve?
No. The budgets, you do them all at the end, Stefan.
Oh, just
At the end of the FinCom does all the budgets at the end.
April,
Approval in one big thing. I do
April.
again. I like your style, and the chief is saying, he's hearing that he got approved.
Thank you. Have a good night. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Dan, I might see you this weekend.
Joan Bertrand would be
Approve the
very
minutes.
upset with Stefan if we voted on the budgets individually.
I thought we vote on these individually. No, just the town hall budgets. We vote all in one.
No, we're gonna give them, yes, you're right. We'll give you a bunch of budgets at the end together. Yeah.
Right, so next on the list, motion to approve the minutes for the January 14th, 2025 Finance Committee Police Subcommittee budget.
Motion to approve.
And seconded.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Was that Brian?
No.
It was Ed.
Oh,
It was Ed.
It was Ed.
And
Okay,
Amy-
fine.
and Amy-
Never mind.
And Amy's gonna second it.
I'll second.
Right, any
All in
comments on the
favor, aye.
minutes? Any further comments on the minutes? No. For the subcommittee members here today, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. All right, second on the list here is a motion to approve of the minutes for the January 28th, 2025 Finance Committee Library Subcommittee Budget Review Meeting.
Motion to approve those.
I'll second
Christian,
in seconds.
Dan. All right, any other comments on the minutes? All right, for the subcommittee members, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. All right, and next on the list, motion to approve the minutes for the January 30th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting.
So move.
I move.
Second.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who called out first?
I did, Bill Boudry.
Bill. And then Evan, you seconded?
Yeah, sure.
He did now. All right, any further comments on the minutes? No, and this is for all of the Finance Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All that unanimous too. All right, and last on the list here, motion to approve of the minutes for the February 10th, 2025 Finance Committee IT Subcommittee budget review.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Second.
Brian. All right, awesome. Any other comments? None here. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And no opposed. Right, all right, last on the list, any committee comments? Brian.
So there is a movement afoot to put on a workshop for members of the Finance Committee to ask questions and learn about the school budgeting process. And I think it's a terrific thing to do, but I think it only makes sense if we all go in with an eye towards thinking ahead of time about questions you want to get answered and making sure that you're really ready to dive into the details of this committee's budget. And, you know, we could even meet before to talk about that if you guys want to. But I think it's a terrific opportunity to air a lot of concerns that I think members of this committee have about how things work and get that ironed out and figure it out. And so there was an email sent around with some dates, which I will now share with you.
That's going out to the whole Finance Committee?
Right. So this will be the whole Finance Committee. This will not be an opportunity to get together and really dive into that budget. And they're going to do a presentation about how they think about it and what their concerns are and that sort of thing. It's really a chance to make sure that we're all clear about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it's in an effort to make sure that when we get to town meeting, we're all on the same page. And if we're not, we got to work it out at that meeting. So that's the idea. And of course, my computer is not connected to the internet right now. Let me just find this.
Dan, did you have any comments?
I did we had a forecasting subcommittee meeting a while ago. You'll see minutes at the next Finance Committee meeting, but I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a heads up of where we are based on that discussion and adjustments to the forecast. And it looks like right now we're running a deficit for fiscal year 26 of about $2.1 million. A number of factors are happening to that. State aid, anticipation of a large school increase in budget, a decrease or an increase in the healthcare line item returning back to the general fund, and a lot of different factors. But the bottom line is right now we're facing a deficit of about $2.1 million. And the amount of available free cash goes negative in 27. I'm sorry, not 27, 29. And our reserves will drop below 10% at the end of 27. So we've got a lot of work to do on the remaining budgets, and obviously in particular the school budget. But right now we've got some challenges ahead of us. but we'll have more on that probably in the next 2 weeks. But that's where we stand at the moment.
Did you say that the forecast includes return of funds to the general fund at the end of
Yeah.
the fiscal year?
Yeah, that's part of the forecast. We have an estimate of how much will be returned each year, and I've got the history of the returns through 24. Obviously, 25 is still out there, but yeah, I've got them through 24.
And I've got a possible date now. So if February 22nd, 9 a.m. till noon is what the folks on the school committee side are proposing, I think we could probably work out coffee and donuts or something like that
Out of their budget.
out of their budget. So what do you all think? Is that something you feel like we as a group could benefit from and should participate in? What do you all think?
Brian, can you say a little bit more? Is this a sit down with them then at the school, or what's the forum here?
It would be, as I understand it, it would be an opportunity to sit down. They would not give the same presentation that they typically give, when they come in to talk to us at the FinCom. It would be more about how they approach the budget and what goes into it. They'll talk about the different types of revolving accounts that they have, and the different ways that they can disperse those funds. It would be a very different environment than what we typically have. And the goal would be to make it possible for us to frankly and openly ask a lot of questions and dive into it and get to the bottom of some of the disagreements we've had over the years.
So this is next Saturday at 9 a.m.
Correct.
Does this meeting, Steve, have to be publicized? Is it?
It sounds to me like it needs to be a posted meeting. Yes.
Yeah. But I would recommend that it not be recorded.
You can have it at the schools, yeah.
But I mean, you have to be posted as a meeting where
Have to be posted, open to the public, yes.
open to the pub, that's what I'm, okay. Well,
Yeah.
And this
interesting.
would be the business administrator from the school? Would the school committee members be there also?
There would be some school committee members. I'm sure Christine would be there. I'm pretty sure Doug Lyons would be there also.
And they've requested that, this is their offering.
As I understand it, this is a sort of a joint production between he who is not with us this evening, Jim Sullivan, and Tom Markham, and I'm sure Doug was involved, as a way to try and, iron out those questions that we tend to have. Steve's counting.
Now, counting when it needs to be posted, we'd have to post it Wednesday at the latest.
Of next week.
Of next week.
It's 3 days, 3 days advance.
Yeah, well, it's gonna give, it's 48 hours, so Thursday is, I like it three days just in case. Just in cases, as they say.
Yeah, you want to avoid Mr. Lieber.
Yes. Well, something happens, the system goes down,
Right.
things like that. Do they have a location?
Not as far as I know. And we could do it here, right?
We could do it here, yep. But it might be better at a bigger location.
We should think about that. But
Is there a particular target number of folks that you're hoping to be able to?
this is really, it's for us to ask questions. So there's not like a requirement or anything. But the goal is, if you've got them, bring them. And let's have it out.
But are they gonna be presenting something and then opening up the questions?
That's my understanding, Bill.
Yeah,
It
it
would
it
start
makes
out-
no sense just to show up and start asking questions, right? I mean,
Right.
so.
I agree with you.
So they'll provide an overall framework of sort of where they're at a high level, I assume?
That's right. That's
Okay.
my understanding.
Okay.
Tom said he would be putting together some slides.
How far along are they with their budget?
That is a great question. And to be honest, I don't know.
But they have already provided us with actuals through the end of December. I think that's something that, at least since I've been here, I don't think we've ever received before.
That's probably true.
These are actuals right off of Munis.
Not from me,
Okay,
From Christine.
Christie.
okay,
Make
from,
more sounds right. Check off from Christine, right?
what I'm getting as, are they on the ledger? Is she giving us?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm assuming that they would have came off
Okay.
out of Munis.
Brian,
Yeah.
is the school committee subcommittee members committed to going to this at a minimum? Have you talked about that?
The Finance and Facilities Subcommittee of the school committee? That's your question?
Yeah, this school committee subcommittee of this.
Definitely the schools subcommittee of the finance committee, that is Ellie, myself, Jim, and Ed.
Ed, you're all committed, you're committed to going.
Ed, are you committed?
Absolutely.
Ed's committed.
It's a
Okay.
great idea.
Okay.
I'm definitely committed. The family's going to Tennessee to visit my son. I'm here alone, so this is like my fun.
I think it has merit and I think it's, I mean, it's a big commitment of time for people, but I mean, I will try to make it.
Awesome. Dennis, you have your hand up.
Yeah, what I'm concerned with is, are we gonna be able to get legal answers? If we ask about revolving funds, whose opinion is gonna govern as to, are they correct in saying they only can use it for this particular purpose? Or is that gonna be, well, we'll have to get back to you. If that's the case, we'll get back to you. I think a lot of it's gonna be spinning wheels. If
It's a great point, Dennis. I hear you.
it could be just a dog and pony show that I'm concerned with. It just.
Yeah, I'll echo Dennis's comment because so many times they just give us, oh yeah, we'll get back to you, and they never do. So I'm like Dennis, I'm skeptical of this meeting.
I hear you, and I hear your skepticism. In my view, it's totally worth it, A, because I don't have anything else to do, but more importantly, because I think that bring the questions, let's get them out there. Let's get it in open discussion and ask those questions. I would love to have Tommy Mullen there. I'm not sure that could happen. I don't know if we can ask him to talk about the legality of it.
It's
Like, is there a legal source that you all would trust with some of the answers to those questions as it relates to state law and revolving funds?
Do you have one?
Yeah, so the guidance is there. It's out there. I'm conversant in it, actually, so I would expect them to present that.
Okay.
DOR guidance, DESI guidance. That will resolve some of the questions that we've had in the past.
I think, they had a proposed agenda, right, that they sent, and some of those comments are on there, that they're saying that they're going to be bringing materials from DESI, from DOR, discussing special revenue and purpose with MGL references. So, I mean, the potential of getting those questions answered correctly seems to be there.
And I'll certainly bring them if they don't. So the DOR guidance is there on revolving funds. I have, I've used it to train folks in my community. So it's there, but it's time to put it out there and take a look at it.
Perfect. Other thoughts?
I'm excited. I'll try to be there.
Judy?
Yeah, their other biggest thing is their labor negotiations, which obviously that's gonna be an executive session item. Are they gonna be able to give us any updates on that, seeing it's gonna be a public meeting?
Great question.
I got great questions, but I haven't got any answers yet.
Well, we did answer your first question.
Well, they have settled with the teachers, their biggest union, so that's public.
I mean, you're right, Dennis. They don't typically talk about where they are in negotiations publicly until it's done.
Right. And that's the biggest part of their number is their payroll, so.
It sure is.
uh,
I think it would be great for them to explain specifically the payroll, the step schedule for teachers and how that naturally escalates costs down the line. I think that would be very important for them to discuss. Operates very differently from many of the other collective bargaining agreements in the town.
And you have particular experience in this very area,
I do.
which is awesome.
And what I'm concerned with is all their half and quarter teachers, well, let's call it that way, for positions. How can they operate by not filling all these positions on a yearly basis if it looks like they don't exist only on paper for a lot of these positions that they're funded, but they can't get anybody to fill them. So how can they
You know how many that
justify the
is?
position?
Do you know how many that is, Dennis?
No, I did something, quarter of this teacher, quarter of that teacher in individual schools. I can't see how they get to those total bodies because they divide the positions into different levels. You know, in their budget, you know, instead of saying I got 12 teachers at the Dolbear School. Okay, wonderful. I don't need to have a half teacher on this and an aide on that. So you can look at each school and see where your impacts are. The way they're doing it now, I don't know how you do it. To compare, to find out what they got.
This does bring up an interesting point, though. Steve, the school committee is the town council on the school side, essentially. They're the elected body.
Correct.
The superintendent is sort of your compatriot or analog on that side. The school committee is not beholden to us, is my understanding.
Under our charter, okay, the school committee needs to present their budget to the town council and to the finance committee, okay, which will make a recommendation on the budget. And we've seen that go different ways before. So no, they are not beholding it legally, correct.
The town meeting is the.
A meeting is the
authority at the end of
already on what the budget's gonna be.
You just lost everybody. So it does present some interesting contretemps because it's unclear to me legally, you know, what they have to do. And my understanding is, in talking about this in previous years, that we're not really keen to get into the level of detail that that Dennis was talking about, you know, half of a teacher at one school, that we were kind of looking more at the general trends. But I mean, there's no reason for us not to go into that level of detail. And the thing is, this would be an opportunity, I think, to have those conversations. Evan, you had a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't think I kind of tailing on what Ed said, like, I don't think there's much of a legal question here. I think if we're willing to work collaboratively and sort of open up books to each other, I think that's great. Nobody's really under the charter all that beholden to us anyway. All we do is make recommendations.
That's true.
For the most part. So I think it's a nice thing for this meeting to be set up and offered. And I think, you know, like Ed said, there's plenty of where the statute isn't clear, 53E.5 or whatever the revolving fund statute is, where that's not clear. CMR is pretty clear and DESI's pretty clear in that regard. I don't think there's a ton of blurriness with respect to how revolving funds can be spent. And I don't think you just post this as a joint meeting of the finance committee and the school committee and be done with it. So if you get a quorum of both, you're covered. I don't think there's much of a legal question here. And I do think there isn't much reason to be skeptical about the meeting. I think if you have questions for them that aren't answered, just make sure you have them in writing and follow up with them and try to get answers. I don't think there's, you know, if there's some kind of dodging going on, I don't, you know, I think you can just follow up. So I think it's a nice thing. I can't do the 22nd, but that's neither here nor there. If that works for everybody else, that's fine. But I think it's a nice thing. It's probably worth doing. And like you said, Steve, the bulk of their payroll for the next 3 years sounds like it's settled. So we'll know, we should know those numbers. I think it's a nice thing to do and a nice thing to offer here.
Anybody else?
Well, I would say for any of those that cannot attend or know that they cannot attend, maybe forward us questions that you might have. We can compile those and bring them to the meeting for those of us who can attend.
Absolutely.
And the expectation is that they'll all be in person. It won't be, there won't be a Zoom option?
That is my expectation.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I would like to not have it be a public showing off. I'd like it to be a frank and honest conversation.
Yep, okay.
Right?
All right. All right, so no further comments. Last thing I wanted to mention is next meeting is scheduled for 27 February, 6 o'clock. I appreciate everybody hanging in there with me today. This is my first rodeo.
Go.
Great.
Thank you for keeping me on track and helping me move the meeting forward.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
I,
All opposed?
Well done, Mr. Chairman.
In 2 weeks.
Oh, we want to stay till 11.
Did you say you had an agenda?
Yes.
Proposed agenda? Would you send it to me?
I will send it to you and I'll send it to the group as well.
Perfect.
I did.
'Cause I'll also,
I know I sent it to you.
Yes, I have.
invite the